Season's greetings to all you hopeless bromanics out there. We've got lots of news for you this hunky holiday. As you may know, our game Casting Call is now available in stores. Exciting, right? It's just in time for you to stuff into your stockings. So get a jump on your gift-giving season and check out Casting Call on Amazon or on our website, castingcallthegame.com. Casting Call. It's the game where everyone plays a part. Dade, a rugged and effortlessly charming construction manager, reluctantly finds himself traveling to a remote mountain town for a work assignment over Thanksgiving. After a long day of meetings, he stumbles upon a quiet diner run by the enigmatic and charismatic Enzo. And what starts as a simple quest for food quickly turns into a feast for the eyes. Enzo serves up a delicious holiday meal, but the real heat comes when the two ignite a spark neither of them expected. What began as a solo Thanksgiving dinner turns into a steamy affair, with Dade discovering a much more delicious main course to feast on. Happy Thanksgiving, my Steamy Stories friends. I'm your host, Nate, hoping you're planning something wonderful for this holiday. If not, no worries. Our scribe, JC Calciano, is about to serve up a delicious dish for you to sink your teeth into. Today's steamy story takes place in a far-off diner where the temptingly tasty short-order cook turns out to be the main course for the evening. Perhaps our hero, Dade, may skip the turkey and go straight to the stuffing this Thanksgiving holiday. So, tuck your napkin into your shirt and prepare to feast on the fable I'm about to share with you in this month's Steamy Stories episode. Dade was 25, radiating the vitality that only comes with youth and discipline. His broad shoulders tapered down to a lean waist, a testament to the countless hours spent at the gym and doing some form of physical activity. His well-moisturized skin showed that he was a city boy through and through. His hair, thick and slightly tousled, was the color of a sandy beach. But his eyes, now that's where people got lost. They were striking, a deep, mesmerizing blue that shifted between green and turquoise depending on the light. His face was soft, yet undeniably masculine, the stubble along his chin and cheeks adding a rugged edge, while his full lips naturally curved into a teasing smile, giving him that irresistible mix of boyish charm and strength. He was the kind of man who turned heads without trying, a blend of rugged athleticism and magnetic charisma that made him effortlessly handsome. Dade never liked traveling on holidays, especially Thanksgiving. For years, he'd dodged business trips that fell near the holiday, but his boss wasn't having it this year. A last-minute construction project for a high-end client needed oversight, and Dade was the best man for the job. So off he went, tasked with inspecting the progress of a new resort being built in a remote mountainous town. The assignment took him 5 hours away from the city, into a quiet town that felt forgotten by time. Winding roads, patchy cell phone reception, and old-school mom-and-pop diners replaced the urban hustle he was used to. By the time Dade wrapped up his work, the sun had already set, and the cool night air settled in. His stomach growled, reminding him he hadn't eaten all day. As he wandered through the empty streets, his hopes of finding food faded, since it was Thanksgiving, and somehow, in the hustle of work, he had forgotten all about the holiday. "I'll be thankful if I can find anything to eat around here tonight," Dade thought, glancing around at the desolate town. Every restaurant and shop for miles seemed to have closed up for the holiday. Just when he was about to give up and call it a night, Dade spotted a faint light from the diner on the corner of a deserted street. The little restaurant stood at the corner of a sleepy street, a classic aluminum relic from the 1950s, gleaming faintly under the flickering neon sign. Its once shiny exterior had dulled over the years, with edges soft from time and wear. The chrome trim still reflected light, but with a muted glow, like a memory of its former vibrancy. The large plate glass windows, framed in rounded metal, offered a view inside, where red leather booths sat neatly along the walls, the cushions worn and cracked in places from decades of use. Inside, the diner was clean, but undeniably tired. Though scrubbed and polished regularly, the black and white checkered floor tiles had developed a soft, well-trodden sheen that spoke of countless footsteps passing through over the years. The countertops were smooth but faded, and the swivel stools at the counter squeaked slightly when turned. The jukebox in the corner, an original piece, stood as a monument to another era, though it hadn't played a tune in years. Behind the counter stood a guy who was nothing short of stunning. Dade found himself momentarily frozen. The man's skin was a warm olive tone, kissed by the sun, his jet-black hair thick and glossy, brushing his shoulders in soft waves. Every turn of his head caught the light, giving him that slightly rugged, adventurous vibe. Whether tied back in a low bun or left hanging loose, his hair framed his angular face perfectly, adding to his quiet, captivating mystique. The guy wore a simple, tight-fitting black t-shirt that clung to his toned chest and arms, showcasing the tattoos that wrapped around his forearms and snaked up his biceps. Intricate designs, some geometric, others abstract, told the story only he knew. His well-worn jeans, slightly torn at the knees, hung low on his hips, completing the effortlessly cool look. A silver ring on his middle finger and a leather cord necklace with a small, meaningful pendant added just the right touches of individuality. The man glanced up as he wiped down the countertops, preparing to close for the night. His brow furrowed slightly when he saw Dade standing there. Sorry, we're closing," he said, his voice firm but friendly. Dade hesitated in the doorway, exhaustion weighing him down from a long day. The guy behind the counter softened at the sight of Dade. There was something about Dade's worn-out expression making him pause. "But," the handsome worker added, "if you're hungry, I can make you something." Dade rubbed the back of his neck, trying to ignore the growls from his empty stomach. "You're already cleaned up," he said. I don't want to keep you, especially if you've got family waiting. I'll figure something out. Thanks, though." The man's smile was small but warm. "Come on in. I'm Enzo," he said, nodding toward one of the empty booths. "I'm the cook here, and honestly, I have no plans tonight. If you're hungry, I'd be happy to make you something." Dave considered it for a moment. Where else was he going to eat tonight? And what better invitation than a gorgeous guy offering to make him dinner? If you're sure, Dade said, flashing a sweet but firm smile. I'll eat whatever you prepare, but only if you join me. It's Thanksgiving, after all, and, I'd love the company. Enzo's grin widened. Deal. I'll see what I can whip up. Make yourself comfortable. Dade slid into a small booth near the window. The diner was quiet except for the hum of the neon sign outside. A few minutes later, Enzo returned and served up a simple but delicious Thanksgiving meal. Turkey, mashed potatoes, and stuffing whipped up with casual expertise. Dade learned that Enzo was 23, a few years younger than him, but both shared the same rugged charm. Dade from his time spent in construction, and Enzo from the physical demands of running a kitchen. As they ate, conversation flowed easily. Dade found himself relaxing, laughing at Enzo's stories, his tension from the long day melting away. Enzo's warmth filled the diner, making it feel more like a home than just a pit stop for a simple meal. They lingered over dessert, talking about dreams, struggles, and hopes for the future. Dade confessed that he'd always wanted to buy a new SUV for off-roading adventures, while Enzo shared his dream of traveling. Italy, France, tasting the flavors of the world and bringing them back to his kitchen. Their connection grew with every word, in how they listened to each other as if they had all the time in the world. For the first time in years, Dade didn't feel like he was missing out on anything. Enzo's company made him feel at home. Better than at home. After they finished dinner, Dade leaned back in the booth, feeling fuller than he had in weeks, and warmer than he had in years. The evening had gone from awkward strangers to easy, flowing conversation faster than he expected, and now he wasn't quite ready to leave. He could tell Enzo felt the same, his eyes lingering as they sipped their coffee. I actually have something that might make the night even better, Dade said, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Enzo raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Be right back. Dade slipped out of the booth and headed outside to his car, the cold night air biting his skin. He popped the trunk and dug around before his fingers landed on the sleek box. The bottle of expensive scotch was nestled safely inside, a gift from a colleague, meant as a thank you for making the long trek up to the mountains on the holiday. Dade had thought he would be saving it for something special, never imagining that tonight might be the occasion. When he returned to the diner, bottle in hand, Enzo's eyes lit up. What's that? Scotch. A pretty good one, too, Dade said, sliding back into the booth, but this time a little closer to Enzo. I was planning to save it for, well, I didn't know what for, but, tonight seems like the perfect occasion. Enzo's lips curved into a slow, appreciative smile. An expensive bottle of scotch with a fine man. Who could ask for anything more? Dade shrugged, trying to play it cool, but inside, he was tingling. Enzo grabbed 2 makeshift tumblers from behind the counter, and they poured a generous amount into each glass, the rich amber liquid catching the light. Dade took a sip, the warmth spreading through his chest, mingling with the cozy heat of the diner. Enzo took a slow sip, his eyes closing for a moment as he savored the taste. Damn, that's good, Enzo said, his voice a little lower, a little rougher now, as the tension between them thickened. The diner felt quieter, more intimate. It was just the two of them. The world outside slipping away into the cold night. Dade leaned in slightly, his arm brushing against Enzo's, the contact sending a jolt through him. He didn't pull back. Instead, he let his fingers graze Enzo's forearm, testing the waters. Enzo didn't move away either. In fact, he shifted closer, their knees touching under the table. "It's funny," Dade began softly, his voice low. "I never expected to end up here tonight, but I'm really glad that I did." Enzo's gaze softened, his hand covering Dade's just for a moment. "Me too," he said, his voice a gentle murmur. "This feels kind of perfect, doesn't it?" They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, sipping the scotch, the warmth from the drink mirroring the slow heat building between them. The tension, sweet and electric, seemed to hum in the small space, every brush of skin like a spark. Dade could feel his heart thumping in his chest as he looked at Enzo, really looked at him. Those dark eyes were softer now, filled with something more than just casual interest. They lingered on Enzo's face, his lips, and for a second, it felt like the world had slowed down a bit, just for them. Enzo leaned forward, his fingers tracing the edge of Dade's face, the touch soft and tentative, but full of intent. "Maybe we don't have to end the night just yet," Enzo whispered, his breath warm against Dade's skin. Dade's heart raced as their faces inched closer, his lips curved into a smile. "I was hoping you'd say that." In the next heartbeat, their lips met, tentative at first, exploring. But as the warmth of the scotch flowed through them, so did the kiss, deepening with a kind of sweet urgency. The world outside ceased to exist. It was just them and the magnetic pull they could no longer deny. Dade slid his hand around the back of Enzo's neck, pulling him closer, feeling the soft tug of Enzo's fingers slipping beneath his shirt, the touch setting his skin on fire. The night melted around them, the tension they built over dinner spilling over into something tender, something more than either of them had expected when the evening began. As the soft glow of the diner's neon lights bathed the room, Dade and Enzo soon found themselves standing, closer than ever, their breaths mingling in the quiet. The warmth of the night, the scotch, and the connection they'd built slowly over the dinner had ignited something between them that neither could ignore any longer. Enzo's hands moved to Dade's waist, sliding beneath his shirt, his touch warm and firm, sending a shiver up Dade's spine. Their movements were slow but intentional, as if savoring every inch of contact, every soft sigh that escaped between kisses. Dade's hands found their way to Enzo's back, fingers gripping his shirt, pulling him in even closer. Without a word, Dade nudged Enzo back towards the counter, their bodies never breaking contact, lips still exploring one another in lazy, unhurried kisses. When Enzo's back met the cool surface of the counter, he let out a soft gasp, and Dade took the opportunity to press their bodies together, feeling every inch of Enzo's warmth, the subtle tremor in his breath as the tension between them thickened. Their hands roamed slow, but full of intention, finding skin, tracing lines of muscle, exploring the newness of each other with a kind of tenderness that hinted at something deeper. Dade pulled back for just a moment, resting his forehead against Enzo's, their breaths coming in soft, ragged gasps. "Tonight's been amazing," Dade whispered, his voice husky, the words carrying more weight than just the heat of the moment. Enzo smiled, his hands resting on Dade's chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heart beneath his fingers. "Happy Thanksgiving," he whispered back, and in that instant, it wasn't just about the desire between them, it was about something more, something that made Dade's heart swell as much as his body responded to the closeness. As they rested there, their bodies entwined, the heat between them ignited, building again slowly, both of them savoring every second as the night promised to deliver yet another wave of passion. The holiday had gifted them something far more than just a connection between two handsome men. It unleashed a passion between kindred souls, passions they had suppressed for far too long. Desires that had simmered beneath the surface now surged, hungry and desperate to be set free. The next morning, Dade woke to the faint clatter of dishes and a fragrant aroma of freshly brewed coffee. For a moment, he lay in the modest but cozy cot, taking in the quiet hum of the early morning. His body still hummed with the memory of the night before, but nothing prepared him for what he saw when he stepped out of the back living space and into the diner's kitchen. There, standing at the stove, was Enzo, shirtless, his muscular back rippling with every movement as he worked, the soft morning light streaming through the window casting a golden glow across his skin. He was wearing nothing but a pair of camouflage cotton boxer briefs, the fabric hanging just right on his hips, revealing the deep grooves of his abs. Dade's breath caught in his throat. Enzo was even hotter than Dade remembered from the night before. His body, now fully on display, was a masterpiece. Broad shoulders tapering down to a lean waist, his biceps flexing effortlessly as he flipped the eggs. Every curve of muscle, every line of definition stood out perfectly. Dade had felt those muscles the night before, but seeing them now in the light of the day made his pulse quicken. For a second, Dade forgot about the cup of coffee Enzo was holding out to him. All he could think about was how if he didn't have to drive back to the city, and if Enzo didn't have to open the diner in an hour, he'd have pulled Enzo right onto the corner and had his way with him once again. Dade's fingers trembled as he took the coffee, their skin brushing casually against the others. Enzo smiled, catching the look in Dade's eyes, knowing precisely what Dade was thinking. His grin widened, his body casually leaning back against the counter, his muscles still tense and inviting, as if daring Dade to act on the desire hanging thick between them. "If I didn't know any better," Enzo teased, his voice low, "I'd say you were thinking about sticking around a little longer." Dade's heart pounded in his chest, his gaze sweeping up and down Enzo's spectacular form one more time. "Trust me," Dade said, his voice a little rougher than he'd intended. "If I didn't have to get back to the city and you didn't have to open the diner, well, let's just say I wouldn't be able to keep my hands off you." Enzo chuckled, his eyes darkening slightly as he stepped closer, their bodies almost touching. "I guess we'll just have to save that for next time, huh?" Dade swallowed, heat flooding through him as he realized how close Enzo was and how easy it would be to close the distance and make good on everything simmering between them. But he managed to hold back. Though every muscle in his body screamed at him to forget the drive, forget the job, and just stay here, wrapped up in Enzo for the rest of the day. With a playful smirk, Dade finally took a sip of the coffee, his hand lingering on Enzo's forearm for just a moment longer than necessary. "Yeah," he murmured, his voice filled with promise. "Next time." But as they sat down for breakfast, the tension between them only thickened. Dade found it hard to tear his eyes away from Enzo's body, and every movement, every flex of muscle reminded him of what he wanted but couldn't quite have right now. Breakfast was soon over, and it was time for both men to return to their realities. As they stood by the door, about to say their goodbyes, Dade couldn't resist one last glance at Enzo, shirtless and gloriously defined, his briefs hugging him in all the right places. Dade leaned in for one last long kiss and bashfully inquired, "What do you think of us making this our own little tradition? I could come up every year at this time. We could spend the Thanksgiving weekend together. That is, if you'd want that." Enzo's face lit up at the thought. "I'd love that. Something to look forward to all year? I couldn't think of anything better. What was my least favorite holiday may just have turned into my favorite." For the next few years, Dade made the same drive up to the diner for Thanksgiving weekend. It became their cherished tradition. Enzo would prepare a feast. They'd talk about life, share dreams, and spend the weekend together in the comfort of each other's company. It was the perfect arrangement. Throughout the year, they'd talk on the phone regularly, but Thanksgiving was their one weekend to spend together, just for 4 glorious days together. It was now 5 years after they had met, and neither had started a relationship with anyone else. Enzo enthusiastically awaited Dade's late afternoon arrival. But this year, as Dade pulled off the main road onto the dirt parking lot in front of the dimly lit diner, something felt different as he exited the car. Enzo was already waiting by the diner's window, excited for the day he looked forward to all year long. But as Dade and Enzo made eye contact for the first time, Enzo noticed that something wasn't right. Dade looked off, a little more something. Enzo decided to let it go, at least for the moment. He smiled as Dade came through the door, pulling him into a familiar, comforting embrace. For a few hours, everything felt like it always did, easy, warm, right. The two of them sat down to the dinner Enzo had lovingly prepared, the table filled with the familiar Thanksgiving staples that had become part of their annual ritual. Dade had brought an exquisite bottle of wine, something special, and as they sipped it, Enzo let himself relax into the rhythm of the evening. The wine was rich, full-bodied, and they laughed as they shared old stories, the tension in the air almost disappearing. Almost. But no matter how much Enzo tried to ignore it, there was something in Dade's eyes, a weight behind his smiles that didn't go unnoticed. Dade's demeanor wasn't quite as free as it had been in previous years, and Enzo's concern grew with each passing minute. He wanted to ask, to press, but he waited, giving Dade the space to share whatever it was in his own time. Finally, after dessert, Enzo couldn't take it anymore. They were sitting side by side in the dimly lit diner, the remnants of their meal scattered across the table, the wine glasses nearly empty. Dade was gazing out the window, lost in thought, when Enzo gently placed a hand on his arm. "Dade," Enzo inquired, his voice soft but filled with concern. "I know you're not telling me everything. I can see it in your eyes." Dade rubbed the back of his neck, taking a deep breath before finally letting the truth spill out. "Yes, something's come up since you know me so well and figured out that I have been keeping a secret. I guess it's time to share it with you," he confessed. Enzo frowned, a pang of anxiety settling in his chest. "What's going on? Please don't leave me hanging. What's happening?" "I've been planning something," Dade said, his voice thick with emotion. "For a while now, actually." He paused, reaching for Enzo's hand and squeezing it gently. Enzo took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. He was confused, but hopeful that the news wasn't something devastating. "Dade, what are you talking about?" Dade's lips trembled into a smile, and he swallowed hard before speaking. "I talked to your boss. He agreed to give you the next 2 weeks off. Tomorrow, we're leaving. I'm taking you to Europe. Everything's set." Enzo's breath caught in his throat. "Europe? Tomorrow?" he whispered, as if saying it too loudly would wake him from a dream. Dade nodded, his smile growing more confident. "We're going to Italy and France. 2 weeks of eating, drinking, and sampling everything you've dreamed about. I know how much you've always wanted to savor all the foods of Italy and the flavors of France." Overcome with emotion, Enzo dove into Dade's arms and kissed him wildly. "This is the best Thanksgiving surprise ever. I can't wait to enjoy everything those countries have to offer, but right now, tonight, there's only one thing I want on my lips. And it's not turkey." Who needs dessert after that sweet little tale? I'm happy Dade and Enzo finally moved in together after years of dating. Love always wins here at Steamy Stories, the podcast where romance turns bromosexual. If you enjoy our work, spread the word. It only takes a moment to tell a friend about Steamy Stories. Word of mouth is the best way to share, so text, tweet, post, or message someone about Steamy Stories, and be sure to join us again next month for another Steamy Stories. Later, bro.